Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight's lead story once again is Megastorm Hercules.
Yes, and though it seems to be settling over the entirety of the continental United States of America, there is some good news.
It is the storm of the century. It has utterly paralyzed our nation.
On a brighter note, people are really...
It's already claimed the dubious title of the worst of all time.
Thank you for that, Nancy. Why don't we take a look at the weather?
Lately I've been reeling, watching the nightly news. Don't seem to find the rhythm, just wanna sing the blues. Feels like a song that never stops. Gotta get that fire back in my bones before my heart turns into stone. So when somebody please pass the megaphone, I'll shout it on the count of three. 1, 2, 3. Oh, in my pretty night, I'm singing to the sky. Give me strength to raise my voice, let me testify. Oh, in my pretty night, 'cause this is do or die. Time has come to make a choice, and I choose. Let it move you, let it move, let it move you. Yeah, I choose. Let it move you, let it move, let it move you. Yeah, back when I was younger, my eyes were full of life, but now that I am older, I live at the speed of light. Feels like a cycle never stops, feels like it's never gonna. Gotta get that fire back in my bones before my heart turns into stone. So when somebody please pass the megaphone, I'll shout it on the count of three. 1, 2, 3. Oh, in my pretty night, I'm singing to the sky. Give me strength to raise my voice, let me testify. Choose. Let it move you, let it move, let it move you. Yeah, I choose. Let it move you, let it move, let it move you. So I walk through the valley in the shadow of night, oh, with you by my side, I'm stepping into the light. I choose. Let it move you, let it move. Joy down in my heart to stay. I need that joy down in my heart to stay. Joy down in my heart to stay.
On a brighter note, while our circumstances haven't changed, I guess our perspective can. Right, Randy?
Couldn't have said it better myself. This is Channel 13, Nancy and Randy. Good night.
Hey guys, Welcome to our COTC Family Service. Hey, we are so happy to have you.
Yes, we are. Hey, give a shout out to our hospitality team. They love to interact with you throughout the service. Let them know where you're listening from.
Absolutely. We have a really exciting service for you guys. Are you ready for worship? Are you guys ready for worship?
I'm ready.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Maker of stars, holder of seas, and all our hearts, hardest of life, Father of lights. When I'm with you, my soul ignites. You see my sin, but love me the same. Breathe on my hurt and raise me again. Up from the ash, up from the dust, you're recreating us. I will not make this day you've made. I will be glad. Rejoice, rejoice in the sunshine, in the sorrow of my soul. Rejoice. How can it be? You know my name, tamer of storms, who calms the waves. How can it be? I can't explain why you carry me and all my shame. You take my sin and all of the mess as far as the east is from the west. Everything changed, I stand amazed. My every breath is grace. I will not waste this day you've made. I will be glad. Rejoice, rejoice in the sunshine, in the sorrow of my soul. Rejoice, rejoice, rejoice in the trial, in the trouble of my soul. Rejoice. Hey! Life is beautiful. You are the color. Life is wonderful. You are the wonder. Life is beautiful. You are the color. Life is wonderful. You are the wonder. Life is beautiful. Amen.
When my hope and strength are gone, you're the one who calls me on. You are the life, you are the fight that's in my soul. Oh, your resurrection power burns like fire in my heart. When waters rise, I lift my eyes up to your throne. We are more than conquerors through Christ. are greater than the dark. With you, we are victorious. Nothing is impossible. Every chain is breakable. With you, we are victorious. Jesus, you are stronger than our hearts. You are greater than the dark. With you, we are victorious. Nothing is impossible. Every chain is breakable. With you, we are victorious. Jesus, you are stronger than our hearts. You are greater than the dark. With you, we are victorious. We are more than conquerors through Christ. You have overcome this world, this life. We will not bow to sin or to shame. We are defiant in your name. You are the fire that cannot be tamed. You are the power in our veins, our Lord, our God. We are more than conquerors through Christ. You have overcome this world, this life. We will not bow to sin or to shame. We are defiant in your name. You are the fire that cannot be tamed. You are the power in our veins, our Lord, our God, our conqueror.
In my wrestling, in my doubts, in my failures, you walk out. Your great love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Whoa, you are the peace in my troubled sea. We gotta do that again.
So guess what, guys? The best part about being with you is it's just like you're here. Oh my So we're gonna ring it on again.
It's all good.
Sorry.
It's all good. No worries. You got it.
Oh, we're doing this again, huh?
Yeah, we're starting over. Because we gotta do it right.
We love you guys. We're gonna do this again.
In my wrestling, in my doubts, in my failures, you won't walk out. Your great love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Whoa, you are the peace in my troubled sea. In the silence, you won't let go. In the questions, your truth will hold. Your great love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Whoa, you are the peace in my troubled sea. My lighthouse, shining in the darkness. I will follow you. Oh, my lighthouse, I will trust the promise. You will carry me safe to shore, safe to shore, safe to shore, safe to shore. Fear what tomorrow brings. With each morning, I'll rise and sing. God's love will All right, man, that is what an upbeat and fun and exciting song. And we have got the joy and we are on fire right now for the Lord, but we are going to move into a slower song where we are going to really just give thanks to God and really just be present with Him in this time right now as we worship.
In the morning you sing over me, and I receive your mercy. Your faithfulness is clear to see. It's constant every day. In the morning you sing over me. Faithfulness is clear to see. It's like the sunrise. It's constant every day. Every breath I breathe, an invitation to believe you are creating something good. Though the season doesn't tell my story, I know you move mountains for me. You're just that good. So I'll give thanks to God when I don't have enough, 'cause He's more than enough, and He knows what I need. So I'll give thanks to God when I don't have enough, God's not worried, so why should I worry? 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 God's not worried, why should I worry? God's not worried, why should I worry? Why should I worry? Why should I worry? Why should I worry? God knows what I need. Why should I worry? Why should I worry? Why should I worry? God knows what I need. So I'll give thanks to God when I don't have enough. 'Cause He's more than enough, and He knows what I need. So I'll give thanks to God when I don't have enough. 'Cause He's more than enough, and He knows what I need. Oh, He knows. He knows, 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 knows. During these times when things are so uncertain, we don't know what's going on around us. Things are kind of crazy and chaotic. God knows. God's in control. And we just have to remember that He is in control and trust in Him, because He's got us. He's got me. He's got you. And we don't have to worry during this time. We just need to trust in Him and have faith that He is taking care of all of our needs and everything for us, so we don't have to worry. God, we trust in You tonight with everything in our lives, God, and everything about us, God. We trust in You, and we lay it all down before You, God. We know You got it. Amen.
Wow, what a beautiful time of worship. Don't you just love that? We don't have to worry because God knows. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. If it's your first time, do you mind taking just a minute to fill out our online connection card? We would just love to know you were here, give you some information about us. Do you have some announcements, Courtney?
I actually do have an announcement. Now, as most of you know, the elders have been working to update our very old bylaws and articles of incorporation for the past year. And you will remember we started the updating process of our articles of incorporation last year. Now it's time to continue the process. Our current bylaws were written in the 70s and have been adapted for many years. It became prudent with our lawyers' guidance to rewrite and update these documents. So now a copy of these changes are available for your review in our office, and we are going to be having a congregational meeting Monday, June 29th at 6:30 p.m. to complete the requirement to make these changes. So again, if you're a member and you would like to come out for that, that's going to be Monday, June 29th at 6:30 p.m. for that congregational meeting.
That's right. And also, thank you those of you who have been watching our Facebook Lives of Courtney and I and
we've had
Pastor
fun.
Jeff and Judy. So this coming week, Courtney and I are just going to be going on Mondays and Wednesdays from here on out until further notice. But then you can still join Pastor Jeff at 7 p.m. on Thursdays and Miss Judy Fridays at 7 p.m.
1 p.m.
Miss Judy, it's Friday at 1 p.m.
Thank you for the correction.
Yes, we will have that change, and then we'll update you and let you know if that changes more. So, well, that's all that we have for you guys. Now we have an incredible message brought to you by Pastor Stan. Enjoy.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we again appreciate it. Don't forget, we have a hospitality team on standby, so let them know you're watching, and if you have any questions, any prayer, any comments during the message, feel free to contact them. Well, I have a joke for you. There's this Catholic guy that dreamed his whole life of going to Italy and meeting the Pope. So he saved his money, and finally that day came where he had enough money to make that happen. So just before leaving for this trip, he decides to get a haircut. So he goes down to his barber, who he's been going to for years. And the barber's a great guy, but he's a negative guy. And so he told the barber his plans. And the barber said, well, what airlines are you flying? If you're going to Italy, what airlines are you flying? He said, well, I'm taking Italian Airlines. He said, man, that's a horrible airline. They've got a horrible reputation. You're not going to like your flight. Well, where are you going to stay? The barber asked him, where are you going to stay when you get to Rome? He says, well, I'm staying at the Hilton in Rome. He said, oh, man, that's a bad choice, man. They have terrible service. You won't be happy there. And he said, well, what are you going to do when you get to Rome? And the guy said, well, I plan on meeting the Pope. And the barber said, man, hey, listen, don't take this personal, but the Pope only meets with important people. And quite frankly, you're a nobody, so don't get your hopes up. So 6 weeks later, the guy comes back to the barber shop to get another haircut, and the barber asked him, well, did you make it to Italy? He said, I sure did. And he said, man, I flew Italian Airline. He said, it was phenomenal, best flight I ever took. I stayed at the Hilton in Rome, and man, they treated me like royalty. And I went to see the Pope. And the barber asked, well, what happened when you met the Pope? And he said, well, I bent down to kiss his ring, and the Pope looked at me and said, son, where in the world did you get that horrible haircut? I hear your laughter actually coming at me, so I know it's good. So you guys know it's funny. Hey, we started a brand new series last week called Choosing Joy, and we're going verse by verse through the book of Philippians, which is the most positive, most joyful, most happiness book in the Bible. And you know, one of the mistakes that we make when it comes to joy and experiencing joy and choosing joy in our life, many times we attribute it to an event that needs to happen in our life, something that needs to take place. You know, when I graduate from college, man, then I'm going to experience joy. When I get that certain job, or if I'm single, if I get married, when I get married, when you're married, when I have kids, when I have grandkids, when I retire, when the kids move out, then I'll experience joy. Then I'll experience true happiness. And you know, in this series, we're going to learn that happiness is not a goal, okay? It's a byproduct of right thinking and really right decision making, right acting. And today we're going to look at Philippians 1:12 through 30. And in this passage that we're going to look at today, Paul identifies some things that can come in and steal our joy, and then he gives us a strategy on how to push back on those things and not let those things rob us of joy. And the things he identifies as pain and difficult people and problems. And there's many other things that can rob us of our joy, but these are the things that he points out. I think we would all agree that it's hard to be happy and in pain at the same time. Remember, years ago when David was young, we rented a place out at Anna Maria Island, and we had a picnic. We went out to the beach. We're just having a great day, man. Spending a day on the beach and swimming and skimboarding, just having a great time until I was stung by a stingray in my big toe. And man, that day took a turn for the worse. And before it's over, it was one of the most painful things I've ever experienced in my life. I'm up on the beach, literally sitting down on the beach, hold my head between my legs, man, just trying not to pass out. Karen's on the phone trying to call a friend of ours that's in the medical field to find out how we can treat this. David's literally has his hand on me praying, and I'm crying for my mommy. It was just a horrible day. And you know, I have to be honest with you, I did not break out with a Hillsong worship time. Okay, so pain can rob us of our joy. Difficult people, those people that are demanding, arrogant, come against us can rob us of joy. Then we have problems that come with living in a fallen world. So pain, difficult people, problems, all can rob us of joy. And we have an example with Paul of how to be happy and how to choose joy no matter what's going on in your life. And I want to remind you that Paul, when he writes the book of Philippians, and he's choosing joy, he is in prison when he's writing the book of Philippians. In fact, as you look back over the 4 years leading up to writing Philippians, just look at his life for a moment. He spent 2 years in jail in Caesarea on false charges. So he spent literally 2 years in prison for just a trumped-up charge. And then he was sent to Rome by ship. And he's shipwrecked and he ends up on a deserted island. While he's on that deserted island, he gets bit by a poisonous snake. Okay, then he's in prison for another 2 years in Rome. And while he's in prison in Rome, he's literally chained 24 hours a day to a guard, which means he has no privacy whatsoever. And Paul had every right to be bitter. He had every reason to be unhappy, to throw a pity party. But instead, he writes the happiest book. He writes the book of Philippians, encouraging us to choose joy, to walk in happiness. And so the key verse in Philippians, in this chapter, is Philippians 1:27. It says that whatever happens, conduct yourself in a manner worthy of the good news of Christ. So this weekend, we're going to look at how to choose joy no matter what happens. And Paul lays it out beautifully in this passage. And here's the first one. Look at every problem from God's viewpoint. Here's the deal. When we don't have the big picture, when we don't see things from God's perspective, it's very easy to become overwhelmed, become discouraged, and get frustrated. And the reason we get unhappy is because we forget that God has a different view. There's things happening that we don't see. We have to remind ourselves we see things in one-dimensional. And I've used this illustration before, but you know, when you watch a parade, you're on a sidewalk watching a parade go by, and you're only able to view what is right in front of you. But if you're in a helicopter, you're able to see the parade from a bird's eye view. You can see it from the beginning to end, what's happening on the side roads and stuff like that. Well, that's God's view of our life. He has a bird's eye view of the beginning and end and everything that happens in between. And the truth is, no matter what's going on in your life, the good, the bad, and the ugly, God is working out a plan. He even takes our mistakes and puts them into his plan. He takes our sin and our failing and he puts them into the plan. He even takes those things that people do to try to harm us. And if we'll allow him to, he'll put that into his plans. And Paul knew all this. That's why he said this in verse 12. Now I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that what has happened to me has actually served to advance the gospel. And let me explain what's going on here. Ever since Paul had become a Christian, he had a passion, he had a dream, he had a vision to preach the gospel in Rome. Rome at that time was the center of the universe. It was really the capital of the empire. And so Rome at that time was the most strategic city in the world. There was no nation more important than the Roman Empire. There's no city that was more important than Rome. And so Paul's dream was sharing Christ in really the center of the universe, you know, the most popular, the most famous city, the most strategic city in the world. He wanted to share the gospel there. I'm sure Paul is thinking, man, I'm going to go to Rome, I'm going to rent a Colosseum, I'm going to do like a Billy Graham crusade. But you know what? God had a different idea. And he said, Paul, I want you to be a royal prisoner of Caesar. And here's the kicker, okay? Nero was Caesar at that time. If you don't know who Nero was, he was one of the most wicked and evil men that ever walked planet Earth. And Paul becomes a royal prisoner of this guy. And being a royal prisoner meant that Paul had a royal guard that was chained to him 24 hours a day. They would actually take 4-hour shifts. So he gets to talk to, because he's a royal prisoner, he gets to talk to a lot of different people he would never, ever had the chance to share the gospel with. He talked to all these guards. So he had 6 different guards every single day. He actually was able to talk to Caesar's family and all his high officials. And God says, you know what? I have a different plan than Paul. And we know at least 2 positive results of what happened to Paul. First one is in chapter 4, we'll see later on in a couple weeks, that literally in 2 years, some of Nero's very own family became followers of Jesus Christ because of Paul's witness to them. And then we find out that Paul, because he's chained to a guard, man, he's got a lot of time on his hands. He sat down and wrote most of the New Testament, which is a game changer for the church and a game changer for the world. So this is why Paul says, you know what? I want you to know that even though this happened to me, being put in prison, God used it to spread the good news. And he says, you know what? I've got my plan, but God's got a bigger and better plan. And he's saying, I can be happy because I know, you know what? God's doing something that I didn't see happening. And God has a different view. And anytime you're facing a problem and starting to get you down, we need to really remind ourselves of the story of Paul, that there's a bigger picture going on. Sometimes we can pray and God's going to show us what's going on. Sometimes we're not going to know it to the next life. But here's what we can know. We can know that, you know what? God sees things. God's moving in a way that I may not be able to see at this moment in time. And you know what? When you're able to face a problem in faith, you know what? It's going to make a huge difference. Two things will happen when we're able to really say, you know what, God, I'm trusting you in this. No matter how it turns out, I may not be able to see how it's going to turn out, but God, I'm trusting you. When you're able to operate in faith, it does two things. First off, it's a witness to unbelievers. Okay? When Christians handle problems by faith, you catch people's attention. Verse 13, it says this, as a result, it has become clear throughout the whole palace guard and to everyone else that I am in chains for Christ. It's a witness to unbelievers. Here's the second thing. It's an encouragement to believers. Verse 14 says this, and because of my chains, most of the brothers and sisters have become confident in the Lord and dare all the more to proclaim the gospel without fear. It's a witness to unbelievers, and it's an encouragement to believers. And God can do the same thing with our problem. We serve the same God, of yesterday, and we serve the same God that the Apostle Paul serves. I want you to watch this video clip of Bethany Hamilton, a young lady that went through a tragedy, and God used that tragedy to cause her to spiritually grow and really be a witness to a lot of people that need to hear the gospel.
Tobias, life with you is so special to me. I cherish every moment with you and look forward to seeing the man you will become. I feel so blessed to be your mom and see it as a joy to share the valuable things I have learned along my journey. Growing up, I had a really adventurous life, just like the life your dad and I are showing you. My parents always had us outside, adventuring, camping, and tons of time at the beach. This life led me to chase my passion of surfing. When I lost my arm, my world was turned upside down. I want you to know that in the midst of all the chaos, there was much to be gained. I was afraid that the world I had known had been taken away from me. I couldn't imagine a life without surfing, and the reality of doing life with one arm was overwhelming. The future felt daunting. But I trusted that God had a plan for my future, even if I felt scared and unsure about what my life was going to be. My mindset went from, I don't think I can do this, to, how am I going to figure this out and overcome it? And I knew the ocean was where I was meant to be. A month after losing my arm, I was back in the water surfing. I had to work hard to learn how to do everything differently. But giving up was not an option. I didn't have the pressure of living up to the expectations that the world can put on us. I had to have the courage to surf those easy waves in the shallow waters, and then work my way up to the real surf. I hope you realize that we can't let setbacks stop us from doing what we love to do, even being the best person we can be for our family and friends. If I could go back and change the day I lost my arm, I wouldn't change any of it. I thank God for all the beauty and good that has come out of it. I believe His plan is better than ours, and sometimes we have to face hard times to become stronger and learn more about life. Hold on to your faith, family, and friends. and the willingness to take the next step and get back on your board and persevere through the difficult times, and always be thankful for the epic rides in life. I'll love you always, Mom.
Very, very powerful testimony. Look at every problem from God's viewpoint. Then number 2, don't let other people determine your joy and happiness. In other words, do not let them control your attitude. And Paul gives us a good example in this passage. Philippians 1:15-17. Paul describes a different type of people that he's had to deal with. He talks about those that were his friends, kind of like his comrades. And then he talks about the difficult people that he's had to deal with in his life and his ministry. He talks about the critics who wanted to slander him and try to create all kinds of controversy around him. And those who just wanted to make his problems worse. Those that wanted to kind of kick him while he was down, while he was in prison. Verse 15 says this: "It is true that some preach Christ out of envy and rivalry, but others out of goodwill." And that Greek word comes from, they love to argue. Have you ever met that person that they just love to argue, they love conflict, they love to be divisive? Okay? And when people criticize, they love to criticize. And when people criticize, usually 9 times out of 10, they're jealous about something that's going on in your life. And I'm sure you agree that, and you know, when somebody criticizes you, that's a quick way to lose your joy. It could be a family member or a friend, and maybe somebody that you just really trust. And when they criticize you, it causes your stomach to get in a knot. Why? Because we want to be loved by everybody. We want people's approval. And here's the truth that it took me many years to learn. And I hope that you can connect the dots a lot quicker than me. You don't need other people's approval to be happy. You don't need other people's permission to be happy either. So you are as happy as you choose to be. And if they're unhappy, that's their choice, okay? You don't have to let their unhappiness be projected on you, okay? And Paul was modeling this for us here. He never let other people's attitudes control him. He's saying, you know what? Some people are just simply jealous. They're cranky. They want to criticize me. They want to kick me while I'm down. And here's the next verse. He's talking about the good guys here, his friends. He says, "The latter do so out of love, knowing that I'm put here for the defense of the gospel." He said, those people bring me joy. And then in verse 17, he talks about difficult people, people with a selfish ambition. He says this: "The former preached Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerity." And he's talking about people here who are ego-driven. And I hate to say it, there are people in ministry that are ego-driven. How do you know when somebody's ego-driven? They have to put other people down to make themselves look good. Okay? That's when you know that somebody is ministering with a selfish ambition. They're compelled to put other people down to lift themselves up. And Paul says, even in ministry, there are people that are selfish. There are people that have a wrong motive, that are preaching the gospel. And the second part of verse 17, he's talking about his enemies. These are people that want to mess with him. And he says, other people, they can stir up trouble for me while I'm in chains. These are the crazy makers in our life. And they'll rob you of your joy if you don't know how to deal with them in your life. And you know what their weapon of choice usually is? It's gossip. Gossip is really one of the number one weapons of that crazy maker. And the Bible talks about in the book of Proverbs that a person who gossips is like a saboteur. Somebody that comes in and sabotages relationship and causes division. In other words, they're emotional terrorists. And the truth is, Paul's saying, you know what? I've had to deal with all these type of difficult people. Don't let them rob you when they come at you. And I love Paul's attitude. Here's his attitude in verse 18. "But what does it matter? The important thing is that in every way, whether from false motives or true, Christ is preached, and because of this, I rejoice." I love that. He's saying, you know what? I'm not going to let other people control my attitude. I'm not going to let other people rob me of joy and happiness. They may criticize me. They may kick me while I'm in prison and down, but you know what? It doesn't matter. I'm not going to let anybody steal my joy. And then Paul explains why you can be happy no matter what happens in life. Verse 29 and 30 says, "For it has been granted to you on behalf of Christ not only to believe in him, but also to suffer for him, since you are going through the same struggle you saw I had, and now hear that I still have." And Paul's saying it is a privilege to suffer when you're doing the right thing. Great is your reward in heaven when you suffer for the cause of Christ. And he's saying, you know what? I can be happy no matter what. If I look at things, if I look at every problem and know that that God has a bigger picture, that God has a perspective that I may not see right at that moment. And you know what? I'm not going to let other people rob me of my joy and determine my happiness. Then here's number 3. I always trust that God has everything under control. I always trust that, you know what? God's got this no matter what. And when you're going through a problem, you've got 2 options. You can either pray or you can panic. Okay, and Paul says this in Philippians 1:18 and 19. I will continue to rejoice. Key word here is I will. That's an act of the will. Okay, so no matter what we're facing, we can choose to rejoice. We can choose to say, you know what, God's got this. And Paul says, I will continue to rejoice in spite of all the bad things that are going on around me. And the passage goes on to say, for I know that through your prayers and God's provision of the Spirit of Jesus Christ, what has happened to me will turn out for my deliverance. And this is a very powerful verse, because in that one verse, God gives us 4 sources of strength to help us through those tough times. He's saying that this is how I stay positive. And the first thing he says, I've got God's perspective of my problem. That's when he says, for I know. Okay, it's what you know that keeps you going. You may not know how things are going to turn out, but you know what? This is in God's hands. I place my faith and trust in Jesus Christ. And you know what? I know he's got a good plan that's happening here. And then here's the second thing is I have people praying for me. That keeps me going. We talked about this last week, how it's uplifting and encouraging when we know people are praying for us. Then he says, I have the Holy Spirit helping me. That keeps me going, that the very Spirit of God is giving me wisdom and giving me direction. And then he says, I expect to be delivered. I have faith that God is going to work out this. God is going to navigate me through this. So he says, I've got perspective. I've got people praying for me. I've got the Holy Spirit. I've got faith. Then he says, therefore, I choose to be happy. I will continue to rejoice. It's our choice to rejoice. And Paul chose to be happy. And here's the other thing he chose to focus on, and that was his purpose. Picture this. Paul's an old man. Okay, he's in prison. He's a long way from home. He's in Rome. He's actually waiting to be executed. That's not exactly your normally happy moments. This doesn't have the makings of a Hallmark feel-good movie. Okay? Think about this. They've taken everything away from Paul. They've taken away his friends. They've taken away his freedom. They have taken away his privacy. Remember, he is chained to a guard 24 hours a day. So he doesn't have a moment by himself. But there's one thing they cannot take away from Paul. That's his ability to make choices. And Paul chose to focus on his purpose. And what's his purpose? Serving God by serving other people. Philippians 1:22 and 25, he's talking about this inner battle that's going on. Saying, part of me wants to go home and be with God where there's no more pain, no more struggles. And then part of me wants to stay here and help you grow in your walk with God. Remember, he's old. Remember, he's in prison. He's waiting for execution. He says that if I'm going on living in this body, this will mean fruitful labor for me. Yet, what shall I choose? I do not know. I am torn between the two. I desire to depart and be with Christ, which is better by far, but it is more necessary for you that I remain in this body. Notice Paul saying, you know what? I'm staying alive, not for my sake, but I'm staying alive for your sake. Then he goes on to say, convinced of this, I know that I will remain and I will continue with all of you for your progress and joy in the faith. Paul's this amazing guy. He doesn't just have a purpose for living, he has a purpose for dying. He's saying, you know, when I'm alive, my purpose is simply to serve Christ by serving other people in Jesus' name. When I die, my purpose is to be with Christ in heaven. Either way, I win. So he said, selfishly, I'm ready to die. I'm ready to go home to heaven. But for you, I'm choosing to stay. I'm choosing to minister. And you know, I don't want you to miss this. The reason why most people are so miserable in life, they think that happiness is going to come from living for themselves. It's about self-gratification. If I just get more possession, if I just get this particular job, get this, that's not going to work. I'm just telling you, it may bring some, short-term happiness. But the way to lasting happiness is self-sacrifice. It's not self-gratification. And Paul says the reason why I'm happy is because as long as I'm alive, I'm giving my life away. I'm serving people in the name of Christ. And let me just ask you a question. Are you doing that? Are you living for others? If you're living for yourself, I can tell you right now, you're not going to be very happy. Happiness doesn't come from focusing in on yourself. Happiness comes by giving your life away, by serving others in Jesus' name. Paul sums up his purpose in verse 21. For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. And let me ask you this question. If somebody came to you and asked you to fill in a blank, what would you say? What would you say? For me to live is fill in the blank. Is it entertainment? Is it for family? Is it for my hobbies? I just want to say this. How you fill in that blank will determine how happy you are in life. If you say, you know what? For me to live is money, I guarantee you will not be happy. For me to live is that right job that's going to be only a moment of happiness. They don't deserve first place in your life. I'm not saying any of those things are wrong, but they don't deserve first place. You were created to have a relationship with God. You were created to have a relationship with Jesus. And he loved you so much that he gave his only son to die for you. And that's what you and I were created for. I just want to encourage you today. If you've never given your heart to Christ, you will never experience true happiness and joy apart from Christ. You may experience temporary joy, temporary happiness, but it will not be lasting. And I just want to encourage you tonight. If you've never asked Jesus Christ to come in your life, I just want to encourage you. Just pray this prayer with me right now. And just pray, Father, I want to start practicing these truths that I heard today. And I know, first off, it starts with having a relationship with you, Father. And I ask you right now that you'd forgive me for all my sins. And right now, Jesus, I ask you to come into my life and be my Lord and Savior. And God, I pray, Father, that you would help me, God, to look at my problems from your viewpoint. Father, that when I begin to get discouraged or begin to be overwhelmed, that I'd remember, God, that you are with me. You're going to see me through this, that there's a bigger picture happening, Father. I pray, Father, that you would help me not to let people dictate my joy and my happiness, Father. Help me to love them the way you love them, Father, but help me to draw true happiness and joy from my relationship with you. And Father, I pray, Lord, that you'd help me to focus on my purpose, God, not my problems, God, that I would just seek to live my life according to your will, Father. And Lord, I just pray a blessing upon every single person watching here today. I pray, God, that you would meet their every need. I pray, Father, when those fearful thoughts come their way, God, that they would quickly be reminded by your Holy Spirit that you are with them, that you're going to see them through it. And I pray a blessing upon every single person. I pray this in the name of Jesus. Amen. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Courtney. I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today.
At this time, I want to remind you of giving of our tithes and offering. And, we just sang a song a little bit before Pastor spoke. It was called I'll Give Thanks. And I'll give thanks even when I don't have enough, because I know that God is enough. And that's a powerful statement to say, and do we truly believe it? Because when we give, no matter what, even when we feel like we don't have enough or we aren't enough to offer, do we really trust that God is enough? Will he cover my needs? Will he be enough for me? So I'll give thanks when I don't have enough, because I know that he is enough. And so I just want to remind you of the ways that you can give. We have a link that our hospitality team will go ahead and put in the chat now that you can click on and go to give that way. Of course, we have our app that you can give through as well. And then, don't forget about just mailing in if you like that way as well. So many ways to give. We want to end the service now with one last worship song before you guys join us as we have some fun. It's a happy day.
Day in history, death is beaten, you have rescued me. Shout it out, Jesus is alive. The empty cross, the empty grave, life eternal, you have won the day. Shout it out, Jesus is alive. He's alive. Happy day, you wash my sin away. Oh, happy day, I'll never be the same. Forever I am changed. When I stand in that place, free at last, meeting face to face. I am yours, Jesus, you are mine. In this joy, perfect peace, earthly pain finally will cease. Celebrate, Jesus is alive. He's alive. And oh, happy day, you wash my sin away. Oh, happy day, I'll never be the same. Forever I am changed.
sure. It is a happy day. Guys, thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a great day. We love you. We love you. We love you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I can see it now, your kingdom